And I'd like all of us to rise to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Carol Hadley, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now, as far as roll call, I don't have a copy of the members, so can we go around the table so we can get, I know we have a quorum just by looking, but just so your names can be on record. Josh. Members of the committee only, please. Oh. Thank you. I'm sorry, Josh.
Amy Rubio. I'm representing the 3rd District.
You're going to have to speak into the microphone. Just push the button.
Amy Rubio with the 3rd District, alternate.
Christina Gonzaga, District 5.
Christian Santos, present.
John Beckman, District 4.
Patricia Barrett, District 1.
Janice Vermeulen, District 5.
Carol Hadley, District 3.
Tony Amador.
David Cushman, District 3.
It appears we have a quorum. That'll conclude the roll call. We have on the agenda a schedule for our next meeting, but prior to that, I think it would be to the benefit of the committee if you have had a chance to review the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions or corrections on the agenda? If not, we'll go forward with the agenda as it's been presented to you.
I'd like to
Yes.
bring a question. It says minutes, but the minutes were not attached to the agenda.
Okay, the minutes were not part of the package, and we should have a chance to review those minutes. Does anybody have a copy of the minutes? All right, they were submitted because I did get a copy. You did send them, and I want to thank you because there's a lot of work that went into that. So we'll dispense with the minutes in case there's any additions, deletions, or corrections that are necessary, and we'll do that at the next meeting, okay? We have item number 3, consent items. We have a report on the status of the 2023 California Legislative related to elections, and number 2, a report on San Joaquin County voter registration, voter roll call. But before we get into those reports, I would like to, as a courtesy, if there are no objections from the committee, allow our speakers who have come, in case they have other schedules like the sheriff's office, that you can make your presentations, and our second presenter also. But I'll leave it up to you. Sheriff Withrow, do you folks want to go first?
That would be fine, whatever's best for the committee.
That's for you. No, we're extending you the courtesy because I know you're busy. You can go first if you want. We'll take you out of order.
That would be great.
All right, are there no objections from the committee? All right, thank you then. We'll go with the sheriff's presentation first. And that's item 4.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's been a busy day, I'm sure, for many of us, and we're running from place to place, so we appreciate that so much. Well, I'm Sheriff Pat Withrow. I'm sheriff here of San Joaquin County, and tonight we're here to with me tonight is Captain Art Hardy, whose division was the one who conducted the investigation into the allegations of election irregularities as it came to Mr. Khan. And from that investigation, as most of you know, we ended up making an arrest and forwarding it to the district attorney for a complaint, and that's ongoing now. So I'm going to step back and turn it over to Captain Hardy, whose division, as I said, conducted this investigation. He's very intimately involved with it, and then we'll probably take turns answering questions if you have any, or I might interject as we go along. So, Captain Hardy.
Thank you, Sheriff. What you don't know is I'm about to throw you under the bus when it comes to questions, so. So I'd just like to thank everybody for coming here today. Supervisor Ding for putting this committee together, the invitation to come speak today, the committee members that are volunteering their time to address this issue that's of great concern to a large portion of the population here. Also like to thank the citizens who took the time to come and spend some time with us, maybe learn some things, give some input. So with that being said, we were invited here to talk about our findings as it related to our investigation in Lodi City Council District 4. What we're about to present to you is not to sway you in one direction or the other. It's merely just to present the facts as we found them. Whether you like the facts or not, they are the facts, and that is what we're going to present. And so, like the sheriff said, I'm with the Special Services Division. We do a myriad of things. Some of those things include election fraud and public corruption. So when we were investigating this case originally, it was not a public corruption or election fraud case. It was merely just a run-of-the-mill quality of life and blight issue that was happening in our local jurisdiction. As we concluded our lengthy investigation, we ended up making an arrest and conducting a presentation and a press conference. And, you know, ultimately, Shakir Khan was arrested for various charges of election fraud as it relates to casting ballots, registering people, things of that nature. At the end of this presentation, there'll be a couple QR codes that you can scan for yourself to have access to the original press conference, the original presentation, and this presentation as well. So here's the charging document, just a cover sheet of what he was charged with. Like the sheriff said, that is ongoing, and it has not been resolved yet. So innocent until proven guilty. However, the facts are the facts. So as we were conducting our investigation, we came across some issues that we saw with respect to how the system is set up. We identified 4 key vulnerabilities: the online registration process, the voter rolls themselves, mail-in ballots, and signature verification. So let's talk about the roadmap and how Mr. Khan was able to commit his crime, essentially. So he used the online process to register people fraudulently that did not request to be registered, didn't know that they were registered, and didn't know that they casted ballots. He even changed the address of some people that were out of his district to be into his district so they could cast a ballot on his behalf. What this did was this essentially corrupted the voter rolls as it relates to what he was able to do. He added, I believe it was 69 total names to the voter rolls that were in his district, moved them around. What you have to understand is once you hit the voter rolls, you are now an eligible voter. And at the time that the ballots are mailed out, they will be mailed out to you regardless of how you got onto those voter rolls. He used intimidation tactics and other types of persuasion to get people to sign their ballots over to him and to cast a vote on his behalf, to get their ID, their identification, and later on I'll show you some body cam footage of our interviews. He used the drop box system to drop it off, used the mail system to mail them back in, and then he used signature verification. That process was kind of like the final check and balance to make sure that no fraud was coming through, that the voters were in fact the voters that were on the ballot. So here we have a couple pictures here. This is from these are all his registrations that he did fraudulently. These all went to his particular house. There's 41 ballots that went to his house. These are the ballots that we found in his house. And again, we were there for a different reason. We found these ballots and we didn't know what we were looking at, but we knew something seemed off about it. So we took a photo of those. So let's talk about what he's able to do and how he's able to use the process. So step 1 was online registration. So according to the Secretary of State's website, the only thing you need to register online is your California ID, driver's license, last 4 your social security number, and a date of birth. So having all this information, Khan was able to register people to vote, even though they didn't ask to be registered, even though they didn't know they were registered. He was able to get that done. At no point during the process does it check for verification of residency, citizenship, the last four of your social, signature requirement, or whether or not you had a felony conviction or you were deemed mentally incompetent by the courts.
At this point, I just want to step in and make sure that everybody realizes this is at the state level. This is not in our county. This is done at the state level. They're the ones who made this available to people. And we have no control over that. Our register a voter, nobody here has any control over that. That's something that the state allows. So if this is a vulnerability, then we need to address those issues to the state. And hopefully all of us in the state would want that fixed, because clearly it's a vulnerability that can be taken advantage of.
And can you repeat? These are things that aren't needed in the they did not request this in the online registration?
That is correct.
Could you repeat those again, please?
So we have there's no requirement for proving your residency, your citizenship, the last four of your social. There's no way to check on that to verify whether it's the entire social or even the correct numbers. At the time that you do your online registration, there's no requirement for you to sign. They do mail you something that you sign and then turn in, and at that point, then you're a fully registered voter. And then there's no, that I could see on the front end from the website, there's no way to verify whether or not you have a felony conviction or you're eligible to vote based on the court system.
So just to strike a point on that one, because it was shocking to me when I heard it. So once this person gets that form and signs it, now whosever name he's used, that becomes their signature. So when it arrives here, the signatures are obviously going to match, even though it is not the person whose name is there. So again, no fault of our own, nothing we could really do at the county level that we've discovered as of yet. I don't know, maybe Olivia has figured out some way to get around that, but the signatures are going to match because they are the same signature. It's just not the right human being.
So all that's really needed to register to vote is personal information and an email address. Now think of how many email addresses you can create as an individual. Mr. Khan used, I believe it's 41 different registrations through 3 email addresses that he had under his name. Moving on, in order to, again, to register somebody online, email address and personal information. Now, imagine if you were in a position to where you had access to personal information, such as employment records, landlord, medical records, things of that nature. You would have name, date of birth, driver's license number, social securities, things like that. So if somebody was so motivated, they could take advantage of that system. So long story short, our conclusion is basically the online registration process lacks any real measure to fend off any type of fraud. It's basically, from what we can tell, the honor system. You click a couple boxes that says, yes, I am this person, no, I'm not a liar, and I didn't commit perjury doing this. So let's look at some examples here of some of the rolls that we found, or some of the ballots that we found, and we began our investigation. So this subject was in Pakistan at the time that he was registered on August 22nd of 2020. Here you can see that on the left is his online application, some of the information involved required, and then if you look at the red box right there, it says no. Basically, that's this person who's filling this out says, nobody helped me out, I did this all by myself. The document on the right is the receipt. Basically, thank you for registering. Here's your receipt and a number associated with your registration. So if we look at the Secretary of State's website or their documents, they indicate that he was registered online via the website, and you know it's redacted out. We had to redact a bunch of things because of voter registration laws, but here, I don't think it's going to show up on here, but here was the email address, one of the 3 email addresses he was able to use. So you ask, okay, well, so he registered, whatever, that doesn't mean he voted. Well, he voted 3 times. And again, this individual was not even in country at the time that he was registered to vote, and it went back to Pakistan, or back to Khan. This was Khan's brother, who lives in Pakistan, shows up to the United States every once in a while. Do we know his citizenship status? No. Yes, sir.
When you say he voted 3 times, was that 3 times in one election or 3 different elections?
3 different elections. So he voted in the 2020 general, the 2022 primary, and the 2022 general. So here's his voting history here. This laser is only going to work in my eyes. Yeah, correct. Yeah,
I have now become Carol Merrill.
you are good. So let's look at a few other examples. In this example, when we canvassed and we began our investigation, we asked a bunch of people, hey, did you vote? Did you register? Do you know this person? Things like that, to kind of get to the bottom of it. And this is just a sample of some of our findings that we had. So,
Is this your wife's email?
No, this is Shakir, who takes for my wife everything.
Oh, okay. And what about the phone number?
This is for him.
These are both Shakir's
Yes, this
email
is
and
not
phone
for
number?
us. Yes.
Okay, so she never put that on
No,
anything?
nothing.
Gotcha, so
Yes,
it's
yeah.
him that wrote it?
No, nothing. She only he said, give me you ID or whatever, so he can register for her and everything.
So to do that is illegal. That is a crime. So this next video is going to show how former council member Shakir Khan showed up at somebody's residence with the ballot sealed already. All it needed was a signature.
This year, 2022 or 2020?
2020.
2020, okay. And so you probably registered that same year, maybe? You're not sure?
I think so.
Okay.
Because I got citizenship in 2019. So that's
Okay, so it would make sense then, yeah, you probably. So either 2019 or 2020, okay. Do you remember how you registered to vote? Did you do it at DMV or anything? Because sometimes when you go to DMV, you can register there.
I didn't do it there. I think if you know that guy, Shakon.
Okay, the council member?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I think I did. He helped me out, I'm not sure.
He helped you?
I think so.
Okay. Do you remember, did he come to your house and help you, or did you like go somewhere and he helped you get registration?
I don't really remember that.
You don't remember? You think he helped you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he was asking for votes and stuff.
Okay.
So that's first time.
Okay. Definitely, you're not aware of that address, and
Even when those elections happened,
Mhm.
the city elections, and he called me. I went up there and he had my vote.
you had your ballot.
Yeah, I think I just signed and submitted
Did
over
you
there.
fill it out? The ballot, or you say
I think
who you say he did?
Shakon?
Shaq did.
Yeah.
So he had your ballot,
He did.
and then he gave to you. And did you fill out the actual? Because it will be like, you open the ballot. There'll be forms. You check who you want, and then you seal it.
I remember I signed it.
You remember signed it?
Sorry if I filled it or not.
Okay. Just the like the closed envelope.
Correct.
You signed that? Okay. And what year was that? Was that 2020?
Yeah, that's when the city election happened.
Okay, in 2020.
So you'll hear some buzzing and a couple audible beeps. That's just our body camera reminding people that they're being recorded. So this next one is what we would consider intimidation. He went over to an elderly person's house, demanded their ID so he can register them to vote.
She said he took her ID. He took her ID?
Took your ID? What do you? Why?
क्यों? He said he need her vote.
Her vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Did he take her ID and keep it?
कितना टाइम देते खड़ो तो नहीं ना आंखों से कहने के लिए no, she said he took and he write down the information from it, then she
gave it back. Okay. What about this year, 2022? Did you guys get your ballot? Did you vote for that?
No, we haven't. Both of us, no.
You never received your ballot, or you just didn't vote?
No, I think I did not remember. I probably I didn't receive it.
And no, yeah. So November you didn't receive your ballot, and you didn't see hers either.
Her either.
Again, that's another crime. That's another person that was put on the voter rolls. They didn't ask for it. They were intimidated to give their information up. This next video, this will be one of the last videos. This young lady said that she had known Shaq before. He had helped her on another issue, and she never gave him permission to use his information to vote or to re-register with another address.
Email or this phone number would be on your registration?
He did help me with the, like, you know, the EDD thing, but I didn't give him any, like, permission to use use his email, like, on my voter registration or anything, though.
Okay, and who is that?
It's Shakir Khan.
Shakir Khan?
Yes.
So he helped you fill out your EDD paperwork?
Yes, he did that.
Okay, but he didn't help you fill out your voter registration?
No, my voter registration.
And one last question. So you never allowed him to put his email or his phone or this email or this phone number, which might belong to him, on your registration?
For voting, no.
Okay. No permissions?
No.
The EDD that she's talking about, that's another matter that we're aware of that Khan was taking advantage of. That is also being litigated. That was one of the original things that we were looking into. So let's kind of look into her voting history real quick. So and again, everything's heavily redacted. We have the unredacted copies, but here it shows that she was actually registered to vote. She changed her registration on 5/7/21 at the Department of Motor Vehicles. It only shows the latest registration. You can't see the email address, but that is in fact Shakir Khan's email address. And this is her voting history. She voted in 2020 during the 2020 general election. So, needless to say, this kind of piqued our curiosity. We wanted a little bit more information for our case. We wanted some detailed information. And so we executed a warrant against the Secretary of State's office. Here's a copy of the warrant here, the face sheet. We redacted all the information, identifying information of the people we were looking for that we had reason to believe that they were fraudulent registrations. One of the specific things that we were looking for on here was the IP address of the person that was registering it. So was Khan registering people to vote from his house? Was this at a different location? Was this at Starbucks? We wanted to know, we wanted to build a complete picture of what this crime scene looked like. So when we served this to the Secretary of State, they'd said they'd never seen a warrant like this and they needed some additional time. And at the conclusion of that additional time, they gave us information. However, they said they had no information on the IP address. They had no idea, what IP address it came from. We found that a little bit strange, and that'll play a key role here in a second. So let's go into security of vote by mail. From our analysis, if you're going to vote by mail, have massive vote by mail, you need to have some security measures in place so this type of stuff doesn't happen. That all starts with accurate voter rolls. And as we could tell, Mr. Khan was able to corrupt the voter rolls in Lodi District 4. The Secretary of State said that they didn't have the voter rolls or the IP address. However, we had a copy of Khan's email receipts from the Secretary of State, and when we looked at the information coming back from the Secretary of State, it came back to a IP address in Washington, D.C. Now, why a guy in Lodi sending it to the California Secretary of State is getting a receipt from Washington, D.C., I don't know. Maybe it's part of the magic of the internet, and maybe our friends at CISA can tell us why that is.
So we don't have the answer to that. And it could be that all the states' voter things, because there's voting for president and Senate and everything like that, Maybe they have a system where make sure they get all that information to Washington. We don't know. So we're not trying to accuse the Secretary of State of anything or anybody in Washington or anything. It's just an answer we don't have. Maybe it's something we can look into, or the Register of Voter will be able to get that answer for us. But and I just wanted to delve in a little bit more to this. Every time you register online, they send you a receipt to your email. So even though the Secretary of State couldn't tell us, we were lucky enough that Mr. Khan was generous enough to save those for us on his computer. And so we were able to tell, yes, they did come from his computer because they came right back to his email address, and we were able to gather all those in.
So let's talk about signature verification. As you've seen in other reports, but specific to our county, these are the ballot envelopes that were submitted by Shakir Khan in his district based on the fraudulent voter registration. Take a close look at the handwriting. It's very similar. All the same handwriting, all the same address, come the 41 ballots that came out of his house. This is how they came in, okay? So here is his campaign document that he signed. Now this became problematic for him because as we were looking into this, we compared the DMV database to the signatures on the DMV database versus the signatures on this campaign document. And on the highlighted portions, you can't really see it that well. It's blurred out on purpose, but those highlighted ones that we determined that those signatures do not match at all. However, the problem is when this document was submitted, it was accepted as their signatures. However they go through that process, I don't know.
Captain, I have a quick question, if you don't mind. As far as the signature verification, how many did he actually sign?
So we sent some of the paperwork out to a forensic examiner to look at, the pen strokes and whatnot. We really can't say at this point. But we do know that at least one of them is fraudulent that was accepted. And how we know that is because when we were looking at this paperwork, we noticed the name was spelled wrong. I spell a lot of things wrong, but I don't spell my own name wrong. And so when we started looking at it, we reached out to this guy and we had a conversation with us. And here's the conversation.
So this is the print and signature.
No, that's not me.
That's not your signature? The highlighted portion is not.
Because it doesn't look like.
I got you.
So there's right out of the cat's mouth right there. That's not his signature yet. It's on his candidacy paperwork, and it was accepted as his signature. I don't know how much vetting goes through that process. Just don't know. All I know is there appears to be room for improvement on signature verification.
If I'm not mistaken, if I can ask Olivia, he turned in one set of those, right? And his original one got kicked back. It was so bad that you looked at it and you kind of go, no, there were problems. These people weren't registered to vote. They were something they're not. So you kicked one back. Oh, he goes, oh, okay, my bad. Gets another one, goes out, gets some other names, and then comes back. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, because they can submit signatures throughout that time frame, as many nomination signatures until they reach the required amount. And so if we don't verify enough for them to be qualified, they have opportunity to gather more signatures. So that's usually how that works. And to speak to that, if it's okay, we had a lot of temporary staff doing signature verifications.
Use your microphone so the folks in the audience can hear you.
So we have since then determined that we're actually going through a bit of a remodel where we're changing the way we're doing signature verification, and we're actually are onboarding 7 new staff this budget year. We were able to do that. So we're utilizing permanent staff to be a part of signature verification processes on nomination paperwork, on vote by mail ballots, and all of those items. So we are looking at how we can improve that process from the level at the county.
And I know you got a little bit more. I think this would be a good opportunity for me to say, I've said this before and we'll say it again. Olivia came in on this in a very difficult time and kind of inherited everything that she got. And when we got involved in this, we kind of blindsided her by it. But everything that we brought to the Register of Voters, everything we asked for, we hit her with warrants or subpoenas to freeze everything. They were very cooperative, did everything we asked. Every time we pointed out something that needed to be improved, she started working on it. And so we're very fortunate, I think, in our county that we had, they were very receptive and with making sure that we could do everything on our end to try and fix some of these problems created by the state or by this subject who's trying to take advantage of this. So, and it sounds like she continues to do so. So I just want to state that at this time.
Thank you. I have a follow-up on that because it's so important. You had to use a forensic scientist for the signature verification or comparison, and you're going to use a permanent staff to verify signatures. What kind of training are they going to go through? I know they all can't be forensic scientists, so what are we doing as far as using staff to verify signatures?
So there is a signature verification. The California Association for Clerks and Elections Officials is a large organization that represents the elections officials throughout the state, and so they put on a training, and we send all of our staff to that training. Interestingly, we're only required to send them one time to that training, when what we do is every time before a big election when the training's offered, we have staff continue to take that training. So even if they've already taken it, every time it's offered, they're taking it again and again and again to be able to stay apprised and refreshed on what signature verification needs to look like.
And just to piggyback off of that, the forensic analysis is for courtroom purposes. This is for criminal proceedings, so it's not for, verifying signatures through the voting process.
Criminal is different than voting crooked.
So,
and I've got one more question to follow up on,
Yes, sir.
on Tony's question. Olivia, in the new guidelines, the first voter, the signature verification is done with a point match, correct? Which you have actually, it's an increased point match from what the state requires. I'm trying to remember what you had told me about the signature point verification. It's first hand scan or computer scan, correct?
So we have the option to computer scan and do auto verification of signatures with a computer. So we set that threshold low. It isn't something that we've used before, but it is something that we can look at implementing. Our equipment does allow it, but we actually hand verify all of our signatures currently, and it's a 3-point signature check. Yeah, which is in standard with what they do in standard banking is the 3-point signature.
So just to wrap this up on our presentation here, this is our conclusion. The online registration process, there's insufficient protection against criminal activity. Just the checks and balances do not appear to be there from what we can tell. The voter rolls, the current law does not allow for any particular vetting or removal based on fraud. There are 4 categories in which somebody can be removed. I believe it's death, somebody specifically requests to be moved or removed, they move out of county, or the ROV is notified that they are a convicted felon or deemed ineligible to vote by a court. But that being said, what we saw with what Mr. Khan did was he corrupted the voter rolls in his on his behalf. So again, the signature verification, it's the last line of defense. We go through this whole process from starting the registration to getting on the voter rolls, to getting a ballot, to whether or not you filled it out yourself, to dropping it into a mailbox. And then the last line of defense is going to be the ROV and the signature verification. So, and then also the vote by mail process that allows for intimidation, which we saw there. It's not only happening in our county, but it's being alleged it's happening elsewhere. There's a court case from our county back in '87 that somebody was specifically removed from office for voter intimidation as it relates to absentee ballots. So long and short of it, from a law enforcement perspective, the current configuration does not take into account of nefarious activity or people wishing to commit crimes. Yes, it is illegal. So is driving under the influence. People still do it. Only difference is we're out there looking for them. I don't know who's out, looking for voter crimes and how to find it. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to the sheriff and he can take your questions.
Way to put your sheriff on the spot. But what we're gonna
I told you I
do,
would.
Sheriff, with your permission, I'd like the members of the committee, if you have any questions, you can start now. Anybody?
First question, citizenship, was there any way, or is the state of California prohibiting you or us or anybody from determining citizenship when they register to vote?
The only protection is you're signing under penalty of perjury that you're a U.S. citizen when you register to vote.
And the same is true for checking social security number?
The social security number, the last four, and the driver's license number are vetted through, so when that's provided on the online registration, they send it through DMV, and DMV will verify that, and usually we get we capture the signature of the voter from DMV, whatever they signed. But then outside of that, Social Security also provides a check. So the way I'm understanding, the way it's been explained to me, is that those two checks happen, and then because the voter will remain pending until those two items have been verified.
Okay, thank you.
On this side, anybody else? Any questions? Is that a yes? Oh?
Yes, because I forgot, I was just listening to all this information. Now that the line of defense has been broken, how do we move forward and really making sure this doesn't happen again?
Well, I think we'll tag team this one, but first of all, we need to get more people involved, going after the state to let them know that this registration process is unacceptable. This is my opinion, and so we've got to make sure that we let our voices be heard as far as that. It sounds like, and I'm sure she'll speak to it, what we can do here is try and do a little bit more with the signature verification. I just wish to remind you, though, that they can't do anything about that if the original signature from that the state allows is the bad guy faking the ballot. So as far as the voter rolls, they've done, I believe, a really good job as far as cleaning things up. They came across some people. There were accusations that people had voted twice in this last election, and Captain Hardy's crew went out and contacted every single one of them, and we did not find anyone that had voted twice, as far as I know. And so we can continue to do that. We will work closely together. We've already had this conversation that anytime that anything comes up that raises their hackles a little bit and they want us to look into it, my team will go out and look at it. And we'll interview people and we'll dig into it. And I believe that sends a strong message. I believe Mr. Khan, being arrested multiple times, has sent a strong message that we're not going to stand for it in San Joaquin County, and the sheriff's office is going to come after you if that occurs. And the Register of Voter has made it clear that she's partnering with us to give us any information that raises her or her staff's attention that there might be problems, and we will act on it on her behalf. I don't know if Olivia, if you want to add any more to that.
Just a small tidbit. So when they came and told me there was 40-something people registered at one address, I was appalled. Like, this was right, I think it was right before the November election. And so, as you all know, we were in quite a transition. And so I was like, well, what can we do? So when we looked in our election management system, I can actually run a report out of our system that will tell me if there's more than however many voters that I set the threshold at registered to an address. So we kind of looked at what was average, and so if there are more than 10 voters registered to any address in the county, we are actually flagging those addresses, and I think we found 38 addresses before the November election, and I was able to forward those over to the sheriff's office, and they were able to have a look, and one was an unmarked apartment complex or whatever it was, so they were able to look at that to determine if we had any issues to avoid this in the future. So we have to look at preventative measures, and I think that that's one thing we can do. I'll put you on the spot, Sheriff, right now. I don't know if this is an option, but if there's some sort of signature verification that you send deputies through or folks on your team, I mean, I would assume for law enforcement it's probably, you know, more in-depth training, but if there's something that we can have our permanent staff attend in addition to CACEO, we're happy to do that. There isn't a lot of resources for that outside of CACEO, and I mean, we do send them to that training, but we're happy to oblige other trainings if there's something available that you might know of.
No, I appreciate that, but we do not with our officers do that. If we come across an investigation, we get people who have years of expertise so that the court can accept that and use it as evidence.
One more real quick question, please. So you said 10. Does that mean like it's an apartment complex with different apartment numbers, or just an address like a single family home? Because doesn't 10 seem high?
I thought 10 did seem high as well, but when we ran it, we have like over 50,000 addresses with people that are registered with. Believe it or not, in my home, we take care of my aunt, and then I have my 2 children over 18, and then myself and my husband. So we're already at 5, and we're a small 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So you have these bigger homes, and actually it's more common than not that you have families living together, especially with the cost of living where it is now. So it's actually not that surprising. And so when we looked, we were looking for that number of like, there's tons of people registered, and then all of a sudden it tapered off. And so that 10, 11, I mean, we're happy to run it at 2 voters, 5 voters, 8 voters, but 10 seemed an appropriate number.
I'd really
to stop
appreciate
at.
it if you didn't run it at 2 voters or voters.
As far as the committee, by show of hands, anybody else have any questions of the sheriff? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for putting the presentation together and gathering the information. It's really appreciated. You had said that this investigation into Mr. Khan's activities evolved from an investigation into another matter, correct?
That's correct.
So if a citizen wanted to file a complaint about voter irregularities or activities or along these lines, who would they file that complaint with? Would it be your office or the ROV, or who would they?
I believe you could do it at both. If they came to the ROV, she would immediately refer them over to us. And if you pick up the phone and call us, deputies are going to come out no matter what you call us for. So we'll come out, we'll take the information, we'll get it to Captain Hardy's unit, and we'll start looking into it. And that's pretty much basically how this one started. You know, it was our community reaching out to us, and we picked it up and ran and worked together, and we were able to discover this. And let's remember, not trying to be cruel or anything, but Mr. Khan is not some mastermind who came up with this plan himself, I don't believe, or figured it out himself. But we've found no one else so far that has come to our attention that has done this in our county. So I think we're doing a pretty good job to keep an eye on it and letting people know that we're watching and being very diligent. As you can see, this investigation went on for several years. It took a long time for us, and that's a lot of money and a lot of manpower, but it's just too important for our country not to do it.
Anybody else before I thank the sheriff and the department? I had from the questions from the audience. Yeah. Right here. Identify yourself, please.
Hi,
Through
Jim.
the chair.
How about that we could go to the district attorney's office?
Just a moment. What was that suggestion?
I was just sitting here with council. We should actually do that during public comment.
Oh, that's correct. You're right. Thank you. I did have one one question. The amount of, I'll call it fraud that goes on, because having run for office, I have personal experience, and I never thought of calling the sheriff's office for, I'll give you one incident. I was walking, handing out material when I was running for Congress, and I told a gentleman, I said, I'm running for Congress. He says, oh. He said, do we get the same? I said, do you get the same? I said, what do you mean? He says, well, we got 8 voters here. And I said, well, how much was it last time? And he said, we got $25. I said, okay, I'll be back. So apparently someone was making $25 for their vote, and there were 8 or 10 at the time. Is that something I should have taken to you?
I would have, yeah. I mean, We've learned a ton through this. When this first came to our lap, we were not experts whatsoever as far as voter laws and things like that, and we were able to work together and ask questions about it and study up on it ourselves. But yeah, we want to hear anything like that, and we will bring it to the Register of Voters' attention. She'll can help us with sections and things like that about people offering bribes and things like that. So absolutely, anytime there's any irregularity, bring it to one of us so we can make sure we can look into it.
Because this is educational for us. I do want to limit it, and thanks for reminding me, to the members of the committee. Anybody else before we excuse the sheriff and thank him? Any other questions from the committee? Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you. It's our honor to be here. Appreciate it.
Just a technical, I want to go back to our agenda. We did not have copies of the minutes. Is there a reason the members did not have a copy of the agenda? I mean, the minutes, I'm sorry.
I never received copies of the minutes, or they would be included in the packet. So somewhere along the line, they didn't make it to me.
Okay, I received them. There's a lot of work that went into it, so we'll include it in the next meeting, the minutes.
Yeah, you're welcome to send it to
yeah,
me.
because people should know the history of our first meeting, where we're coming from. The next presentation is Mr. David Robb. And I saw him in the back of the room. Mr. Robb, would you please come forward? We're giving you the courtesy, in case you have to leave, of making a presentation first, and then we'll go back to our original agenda.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the time here. Am I coming through okay?
I can't hear you well.
Is there a way to adjust volume on this? Okay. I'll try to speak a little louder. Hopefully that will help. What I'm going to show tonight is the results of over 3 years of investigations into election integrity that I've been doing, and assisted by a small group of local people that have been interested in the same subject. What I want to show you tonight is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of material that I will present, but it really is not the whole story. There is a lot more, but in fact, I'll even be moving swiftly through some of the slides just because I don't want to take excess amounts of time. But there is an awful lot that has turned up in the investigations, and a lot to be concerned about. So with that, what is election integrity? It's basically ensuring that our elections are safe, secure, and give results that we can trust. We need to be able to trust our elections. If we can't trust them, we can't trust our government. So election integrity is of critical importance. My background, I've been a practicing scientist for over 50 years. The important part from that is that in science, data is king. The facts are the facts. It doesn't matter how you feel about them, what you think about them, whether you like them or don't like them. They are the facts, and that is what we have been looking for in these investigations. Number of questions. Again, I'm going to pass through some of these slides quickly. But what is election fraud? It's the intentional addition, removal, or manipulation of ballot counts to get an outcome of an election that is not what the voters have intended. There are at least two basic types of fraud. There is the traditional fraud that we've seen in years past, where you have cemetery votes, you have double voting. Basically, it's small scale. It usually doesn't affect an election outcome, but we'll call it retail fraud. But our new changes in our election laws and election systems has allowed something new. And this is partly what the sheriff presented, and that is a systematic fraud where the voter rolls, vote by mail systems, ballot drop boxes, a whole range of things are manipulated and used to create massive amounts of fraudulent votes. Enough votes to actually overturn even a national scale election. We've seen it not only in this country, but other countries around the world. And as the sheriff has alluded to, these fraudulent votes are very difficult to find. They look just like ordinary votes. And so when you try to investigate something like this, it's a real challenge actually to find that it's even happening. But you can change the election. So we have what I call the election triad, the election fraud triad. It consists right now of dirty voter rolls, universal vote by mail systems, and ballot drop boxes. Those three act together to create opportunities for massive fraud. We're going to look at each of those in turn. Again, a very busy slide, but as the sheriff pointed out, it's very easy to create fictional votes, very hard to find them. And one of the things, our voter roll laws are affected by two federal laws. One is the Election Act of 1993 that specified about voter rolls and such, and then there's the Help America Vote Act, which continued on that and provided some additional information on how voters can identify themselves and other needs. Again, very difficult to remove bad entries, very easy to create fictional ones. And the fictional ones are particularly interesting because the 93 law started the process, and we can see that we have fictional voters increasing, building up over time in our voter rolls. Now, they don't die, they don't move, they don't commit crimes, they don't ask to be withdrawn from the rolls, and they always vote the way you want them to. So that is a problem. We have, in the course of the investigations, identified at least four different kinds of voter rolls that are present. We've got the roll of active voters. So these are the ones that are currently registered. They're the ones that get sent ballots and the ones that we check when we receive a return ballot. There are inactive voters that have been removed from the active rolls for one and another reasons. Originally, we removed a lot for lack of voting history. They hadn't voted for 8 to 10 years, and so they would be pulled out. We haven't done that for quite a while. We have canceled voters, ones that we have evidence that they died or that they moved out of the county or out of the state. And then we have the provisional and pending voters that were mentioned earlier. So the voter rolls change with time. We have people that are added, voters move, they die. Some of them actually even vote. But we've been collecting snapshots of the voter rolls. We can, through a request, obtain copies for research purposes of the voter rolls from our ROV, and we've been doing that over periods of time. What we've been looking at is how do those voter rolls change? How do people get added? How do they get removed? What are the totals? And we do it by a simple comparison process. This is just, we build two lists. One is the early roll data and then a later roll data. We compare them and we find out what's changed. One of the first things that came out, and one that I found very concerning, is something we call churn. And churn is where there are large numbers of voter registrations that are added or removed from the voter rolls, even though the net total only changes by a small amount. We see this consistently throughout all of the rolls that we have looked at. We looked at particularly at the ones that were removed because, as Jeff pointed out, there are only 4 reasons for legally removing someone. When we checked on those, we could only find less than half of them had legitimate reasons for removal. So this is a little bit of what we saw. On the far left, the red curve is the total number of voters in the voter rolls. We first started looking in October of last year. The last data is from mid-July of this year. And we see a reasonable growth in the number of registrations in the voter rolls. The blue line in the middle simply shows where we were at the beginning. That's just a reference point. Interesting on that graph is the green curve. That is the number of voters who started off in October in our rolls and have slowly been declining. Now, a few of them die, a few of them move, but what happened? Where are they going? Where are they coming from? If you look on the right-hand side, the red curve is the same as the left graph, but the green curve is the number of voters that were added to the voter rolls. The blue curve is the number that were removed from the voter rolls. The net is the red curve. If you want to see what the numbers are, again, this table here, we added about 7,800 voters in roughly 9 months, net to the voter rolls, but there were over 38,000 voters that were churned through the rolls to get to that 7,800. Where did they come from? Where did they go to? Those are real questions, and that represents 10% or so of our current voter rolls. So we've had turnover of 10% unexplained in the voter rolls in a recent 9-month period. We talked about, Olivia mentioned the voter addresses. You know, if you find 20 people, 30 people living in a one-room apartment in somewhere downtown Stockton, that's probably an indicator that something wrong. But there are other things. Either they're registered to a business address or they're registered to a vacant lot. A variety of things that we can find by looking in the voter rolls. Dead voters, there's still, even though we've cleaned up a number of them, there's still a large number of dead voters present in our rolls. One that we found earlier in the investigation had died in 2016 and had voted twice since then. She's since been removed, but she was there for the 2022 election. So we estimate that from statistics that there are probably about 10,000 dead voters still in the rolls out of 390,000 total. That's a pretty significant number. But more than that, we have the reserve voters. Reserve is a name we give to voters that have not voted for the last 8 to 10 years but are still carried in the active rolls. We have ones that have moved, but they're still listed as present and get sent ballots. They're the fictional voters, the ones that you can't get rid of. So when we say reserve, these voters have the potential of being used to alter elections. They can be brought in fairly simply into the voter process, be sent ballots, and have ballots returned, even though they don't necessarily exist or would have voted. We found about 60,000, actually over 60,000 of those in our current voter rolls. And about 10,000 of them turned up to vote in the 2022 election. Okay, we are doing some cleanup work on our voter rolls. At the end of March of this year, there were 392,261 active voters in the rolls. There were 2,296 dead voters, moved voters, and others who were removed from those rolls, leaving us with 393,291. We actually increased the voter rolls by 1,000 after we removed over 2,000. That is a total change in the voter rolls of 3,000 voters in a month and a half's time. We had to make up 2,000 for the ones that were removed and an additional 1,000 to increase the total number. Where did they come from? I don't know. And again, was there a comment there? Okay. Universal vote by mail. This is one of the, I would have to say, personal opinion, worst things that's happened to our election system in years. It is a result of a passage of AB 37, which was enacted in response to COVID, but it authorized universal vote by mail. Everybody enrolls gets mailed a ballot, and it also set up ballot drop boxes. The Carter-Baker Commission, 20 years ago, looking into election fraud and election systems, said absentee ballots, which is what they were calling it at the time, remain the largest source of potential voter fraud. Have we learned anything in 20 years? I don't know. One of the things about a vote by mail ballot, there's no way to tell when a ballot is received at our registrar of voters office if the contents of that envelope are actually the contents the voter whose name is on the outside of the envelope put in when he mailed it. There's a lot of places in between that initial voting by the voter and the time it's received that content can be changed or altered. We don't have a chain of custody for vote by mail ballots from the time that the list is sent to the printers to the time the ballot comes in to the registrar of voters office. Everybody in Europe tried this. I mean, there's a lot of attractive features to it. Makes life very simple in many ways. Every country that tried it has rejected it. Some entirely, some have preserved absentee voting, but they tried it and rejected it. We haven't yet. Just one of the aspects, in the 2022 election, about 1,700 ballots were received by the ROV that didn't have signatures on them or had signatures that didn't match the name of the voter that was printed on the envelope. So someone went to the trouble of filling out a ballot, putting it in an envelope, mailing it off, and forgot to sign it. We'll come back to those numbers later. Another thing is with universal mail-in voting, we send out lots and lots of ballots. In 2022, over 387,000 ballots were mailed out. 160,000 of them were returned. Others, that's just the ballots that were returned by mail or by Dropbox. That leaves 227,000 ballots unaccounted for. Where did they go? What did they do? Now, some people will say, oh, well, it doesn't matter because they didn't show up, they weren't counted. No problem. No, that misses the point because every one of those 227,000 ballots contains a pristine copy of a ballot form printed on official paper. Anyone that gets those ballots, pulls them out of the dumpster, pulls them out of apartment buildings or wherever, can fill those out and use that pristine form to replace a legitimate ballot if they can get their hands on it. I said there was no way to tell if the contents of the envelope matched the voters' intentions. That's one of the reasons. And it's compounded by the fact that ballot harvesting is now legal in California. You get strangers coming around saying, you give me your ballot, I'll be happy to take it down and mail it for you, save you the trouble. You can just stay home. How do you know that those people are legitimate, are going to actually deliver your ballot unmodified? You don't. I'm going to give you two examples, and please do not do it at home. Both of them are illegal, and I would not want to be responsible for anyone ending up in a county jail or worse. So the first one is ballot redirection. This is what our sheriff spoke about with Khan. He was able to change entries in the voter registration data to redirect mailings to an address he owned or could control. That gave him a new ballot for someone else that he could fill out, scrawl a signature on it, send it either to the mail or in a Dropbox. And the person who originally was supposed to get that ballot never even knew that it had gone through that process. Many of them who have no intention of voting don't even know. They don't check to see if they've been recorded, a vote has been recorded for them, but yet it's counted in the official counts. The second one is ballot replacement, where either through ballot harvesting or some other mechanism, someone obtains a vote-by-mail ballot that has been signed by a legitimate voter. They take it, steam it open, pull out the contents of the original voter, take one of the pristine ballots that they've obtained that marked up, put that in the envelope, reseal it, it goes in, it gets counted against that voter's name, even though that's not what he voted for. Sheriff talked about voter intimidation, ballot trafficking. In that con election, 100% of the ballots that you saw passed signature checking because all that they were able to find was the empty envelope. The ballot had been counted and appeared in our certified counts. This is some recent history in Lodi. I don't want to pick on Lodi, it just happens to be a good illustration of what's been going on.
Yeah, you better leave Lodi alone.
Yeah, my apologies here. No, Lodi is just for illustration purposes only, please. Nothing against Lodi. But we see what happened here. In the there are 3 elections shown in this curve. The green one on the left is the 2020 election. The red one in the middle is the 2021 recall election. And the one on the right, the blue one, is the 2022 elections. Okay. We see in District 5, District 4 is far left, District 5 in the middle, and on the far right is the average population in the district. Not the voter rolls, the average total population in there. We see in District 5, during the recall election, there were over 45,000 voters registered in Lodi to vote. If you took and registered every man, woman, child, cat, dog, and duck and twice over in that district, you still wouldn't come up with the total number of voters who were registered to vote in that election. And these figures come from our official certified data. I'm not making it up. This is you can go online, find the records, and look for yourself. And you see, that was the number registered. Next to it is the number of votes that were cast, or votes counted. And you see there, even the number of votes counted was about twice the total population, not the registered voters, the total population of District 5. Does that suggest something? We mentioned the reserve voters. Did the reserves get called up to pad out the registrations? Did the reserves have votes cast for them that ended up with twice as many votes there? Where did this all come from? And again, this is not something I make up, not something speculative. This is from the official data that you can pull up off the registrar's website. We have people saying, well, vote by mail is so popular, really. People like to be able to vote from the convenience of their home. So one of the things we did was we conducted a survey. And what you do, you go out and you ask people, do you like it? By 2 to 1, they don't like vote by mail. They would prefer to vote in person. Yet, we have, vote by mail increases voter turnout. How did that happen? How do you reconcile the two? On one hand, people don't want to vote by mail. On the other hand, lots of people do. Well, there is one group with whom vote by mail is very popular, and that's the ones that want to commit fraud by mail. when we get that increase, is that due to actual real voters that want to go in and vote by mail, or is it people who are exploiting the system, using the weaknesses in our voter rolls and our vote by mail to actually commit election fraud? What do we have to keep us from counting votes? The checks, there's almost none. We've talked about signature verification. This is kind of a schematic of how vote by mail envelopes are processed when it comes into the ROV. But they all end up in that dark box of the envelope is checked for the signature. That in systems language is what's called a single point of failure. If that does not work, it doesn't matter what the rest of it is, so it all fails. So if we don't have a working, functional system at signature verification that can find and pull out fraudulent votes, they all go through to be counted. Well, the Secretary of State has said in their regulations that a signature on a ballot must be presumed valid. And the only way that you can reject it is if you can find 3 people who will agree that the signature doesn't match. And even if that, the requirement is that you set the ballot aside that's challenged, and you call up the voter, or you email them, or you send them a letter saying, gee, we got this irregularity in your ballot, can you correct it for us? So they have a chance, including those who are committing fraud, to respond and say, yes, that's my ballot, I voted. But if you call up someone who's committed fraud and say, gee, did you send in a fraudulent ballot? No? Okay, very good, we'll count it. Not much more than that. And these vulnerabilities, that's just not speculation. These have been used right here in San Joaquin County, as the sheriff attested, to actually introduce fraudulent ballots into the system and have them counted. I sent in a public records request to find out more about the signature process. And I got a kind response from it, where in 3 points, they have no idea how effective signature checking is. And they don't have any studies, anything that's been done to find out how effective signature verification is, or what methods are more effective than others. And lastly, they don't have any idea how much fraud there might be in our elections. It could be anywhere from 100% to 1%, somewhere in between. Thing is, we don't know, and finding out is very difficult. We do know, thanks to the sheriff's investigation, that in at least one case, one instance, 100% of the ballots that were received that were fraudulent, known fraudulent ballots, were passed through and counted in the election results. Drop boxes. This is the last leg of it. If you see a video, I mean, drop boxes are video monitored. They're very secure, you know, they're bolted down or chained down or something. So once a fraudulent ballot is in the box, it's pretty safe. You know, and the way it gets in there, it's that little slot on the top where you stick them. But most fraud happens actually before the ballot gets to the drop box. It's where the ballot has been redirected. It's when the ballot contents have been replaced. Other things that when you find a ballot in the drop box, you don't know where it came from. You don't know who put it there. Here we have someone putting ballots in a drop box. Notice they've got plastic gloves, they're wearing a mask. Now, is this person a good citizen helping their friends and neighbors? Or are they a mule depositing fraudulent ballots? Anyone here able to tell? I can't. That's what a video monitoring shows you. Now, there's one big advantage of using drop boxes over putting ballots in the U.S. mail, if you're willing to commit fraud. And that if you put a fraudulent ballot in the U.S. mail, it is a federal crime and it may likely be investigated. If you put it in the drop box, there appears to be no law against putting a fraudulent ballot in a drop box. So if you want to commit fraud, that's the safest way to do it. Use the drop box. This is a busy slide. These slides apparently are going to be on the website, so if you don't have to take a lot of notes or worry about going through quickly, you can pull down a copy of it for your own inspection. Again, alluding to the comments from the sheriff, voter fraud is very difficult to find and manage. From the con data, and that was, I have to emphasize that it was extreme good luck for the con case to come about here. It's provided a lot of good data, a lot of data that we can use to analyze just how prevalent fraud might be and the mechanisms behind fraud. So we have to be very thankful to our sheriff for pursuing it. But from that data, we can figure that there's probably a minimum of 15% of vote by mail ballots that are fraudulent. And more likely, it's around 25%. Now think about that for a minute. In the last election, how many races were won by less than 15% of the votes? 15% alone is enough to swing almost any election. 25%, not a chance of getting an accurate election. We see a fraud fingerprint. This shows the rest of the districts, and we see that in Lodi, again, not picking on Lodi, but we see that it was across all the districts in 2021. And we've seen, I don't show it here, but we've seen the same kind of pattern showing up across the county and probably across the state. Again, certified data, not made up. This is real data. You can go check for yourself. There's something called a CVR, cast vote record. These are public records. You can actually request a copy of them. And when the ballot is processed at the ROV office, they're scanned, and an electronic record is made of the choices that were made on each ballot page. And that little file has got a timestamp of when it was processed. And the whole collection of them is kind of the gold standard of the data in describing the results of that election. I requested a copy from the 2022 election. I got it. There were close to 500,000 of these little files in the cast vote record. So I contacted the ROV and asked for some assistance in deciphering them to get the actual counts, and learned that our ROV doesn't know how to read those files. They send them out to a third party that can read them and returns back to them the counts from that election. Well, I don't have access to that third party, so I actually wrote some software that allowed me to decode those 500,000 files and calculate the totals. None of the results that I got matched the ones that were in the certified totals. The differences were usually small, but none of them matched. And I got through another source, a copy of the 2020 election, and the same thing. So it's not a discrepancy I can explain. I just know that it's there. But what it did do in 2020 is it let us look at the con election. And you see on the far left is by date across the bottom. The processing started early before Election Day. And we see 5 days into the election processing, Con had won. And he had won by mail-in ballot votes. That's the red bar that sticks up above everybody else. So after election day, things settle down and you get kind of normal distributions. But this is a fingerprint of a type of fraud that exists in the elections. We've seen Khan's case is a little extreme, but we see the same kind of front-end loading of mail-in ballots in other races as well. Some of them are flat, they're perfectly honest. Others seem to have been manipulated. I can't say for certain. I'm not accusing anybody. I'm just saying that this is something odd that turned up in our analysis. And this, again, when I say it's tip of the iceberg, there's a lot of data that I'm not able to show you here right now, but it goes much deeper. Almost impossible to prosecute. The difficulty in actually finding who's responsible for committing it is extreme. And as our sheriff pointed out, this is something new for them. They don't learn in police academy how to investigate election fraud. This was kind of a make it up as you go along process. And they've done a good job of making it up, but it's difficult. But because it's so difficult to detect and prosecute, it makes election fraud very low risk and very high payoff. There's a lot of ways that our elections can be attacked. Election software and systems. I'm not going to delve too much into the machines. There's a lot of additional material on machines. Part of my background is designing computer systems and computer communication systems, so it's something I have, call it professional knowledge about. Machines aren't transparent. We don't know what is going on inside them. They contribute to controversy. And they contribute to public conflict over the elections. One of the things about the elections, people talk about internet connections. By California law, no portion of the voting system is to be connected to the internet. That's Election Code Section 19205. However, if you go later on in the code, it says, well, if you connect to the internet, then you have to use these particular methods. You can't do it, but if you do it. You can't do it, but if you do it. Is there something wrong with that? And every government system, including a bunch of three-letter agencies, Department of Defense, everybody that have far better security systems than we have in our little county here, has been hacked. Why should we believe that our election systems are invulnerable? Poll pads. These are, everywhere you go to vote, they've got typically one of these poll pads. There's all kinds of things that you can do with a poll pad. They're internet connected. They're connected in a way that doesn't even satisfy, for the most part, the conditions that say if you connect, you have to do it this way. There's lots of those poll pads out there. Every one represents a vulnerable point. Say one gets borrowed for half an hour, or gee, we miscounted it, or it breaks, or whatever. They're basically iPads with specialized software in them. Very easy to investigate. And they can even be impersonated. If you know enough about the computer systems, you can actually create essentially a fake poll pad that allows you to go out and access the voting records and make changes. You can change a voter registration information from a poll pad. Again, why should we think that it can't be compromised? If no one else can prevent that, what makes us special? So what do we want? We want elections that we can trust. We want to be able to conduct transparent audits. So if something is not right, or we think something isn't right, we can actually go and inspect and find out. And we want to know that our elections are safe and honest. And we want election officials to stop telling us that everything is okay because it's not. We, again, I mentioned the survey that we conducted. There were more things that we asked. And we got, at the top left, you know, there's a reasonable distribution of ages, so it wasn't just us old folks or young folks or whomever. We asked, you know, do they think that there are problems in the county? And almost everyone said, yeah, I think there's anywhere from a reasonable amount to huge amounts of fraud present. Not necessarily able to prove it, but the public perception is that there is significant fraud present in our elections. This red box up at the top is one of my favorites. One of the questions that we asked was, is it legal to sell your ballot? 25% of the voters that we surveyed said, yeah, perfectly fine. Is it legal? No. No, it's a serious crime to sell your ballot. But 25% think it's okay. This is a failure in our education system for our voters. And what do they actually want to see? What are the changes that they would like to see? Well, they want to see voter ID. They want to see vote in person. They want to see us clean up the voter rolls. The least popular is centralization of elections, which is what the Voters' Choice Act does. Nope, forget that side of it. So, what can we do? This is not hopeless. There are lots of things that we can actually do. One of the first things is make sure that our supervisors reject the Voters' Choice Act. It is, in my opinion, and several others, a very bad idea that we don't want to have happen here. We want to promote voter education, and particularly have our ROV publicize and popularize the idea that instead of voting by mail, come on election day, vote in person, and do that as widely as you can, because one of the surest protections against fraud is voting in person. The supervisors can prepare resolutions. We can't change the vote by mail system. We can't change the registration system directly in our county. But what we can do is have our supervisors say, look, put together a resolution, vote, and say, the people of the county of San Joaquin don't want these things. Please, people in the legislature, fix this for us. Our county wants this to happen. The sheriff maintains a hotline. We had questions earlier about what to do if you see something or encounter something. Sheriff maintains a hotline during the elections. Give him a call and say, gee, I saw this big pile of ballots fluttering in the wind, or I saw someone that I know wasn't a legal harvester dumping hundreds of ballots in a drop box. Whatever it is that doesn't make sense, you call the sheriff hotline, and they can pursue that. One of the things, we can require our ROV to follow the law. Two things. The law says that all ballots have to have a timestamp on them. Now, if you put it in the US mail, it gets postmarked with the timestamp. However, if it's pulled out of the drop box, we saw from the ones that the sheriff presented that they didn't have timestamps on them. Every one of those ballots should have had a timestamp indicating when it was processed or received at the ROV. And that's a law. Right now, I don't think we're following it. Okay, and we can eliminate internet connections for the poll pads, and we should. Because yes, it makes it a little less convenient for the ROV, but our elections don't exist for the convenience of the ROV. They exist for us. I mentioned the third party that interprets the cast vote records. We also have a third party that maintains our voter rolls. We really need to have voter rolls brought back under local control. we shouldn't, the company that we have maintaining our rolls handles 23 other counties in the state. And I talked about the different types of voter rolls. It's very easy, with the click of a mouse, to transfer voters from different rolls across. You can call up the reserves. You can do all kinds of things behind the scenes. And all that churn that I showed at the beginning, where did that come from? Who was doing that? Why was it happening? Is it happening in our third party, or are they just an intermediary? One of the things, we have some good colleges here in this town, in this county. Why not have our supervisors commission a study looking at just how effective signature verification is? It would make a wonderful class project. I suspect many of them would do it without charge to us, just as a way of teaching people about statistics and good experiments. But easy thing to do, and it would give us information that apparently no one else in the country, perhaps even in the world, has. Just how effective is signature validation, and what makes it, what can we do to make it effective? We can set up audit teams. We have lots of people with accounting backgrounds in this county. Set them up as teams before an election, have them ready to go, so when the election finishes, they can go in, they can do audits, they can make sure that everything is properly done, and counts, the numbers match up. And one of my favorites, we canvass to cure. Instead of calling up or emailing someone to come cure their ballot or to send in information, we can have teams actually go out and knock on the doors to see if that is a real person. And if it is a real person, did they actually mail in a ballot? That gives us hard information that we don't have right now on just how extensive voter fraud might be. And it's an easy thing to do. It increases public participation. I think a lot of people would be more than happy to become part of one of those teams. And you remember that 1,700 unsigned ballots that showed up early? At the end of 2022, after the results were certified, almost half of those still remained uncured. Were they legitimate? And if so, why weren't they cured? If they weren't legitimate, where did they come from? What did those ballots contain? Canvassing is just people going out and knocking on the door. It's a fancy name for a little bit of footwork. Easy to do, lots of good information that comes back from it. Eliminate drop boxes. We have more drop boxes than we really need. They're post office boxes, typically within a few hundred yards to a half mile of every drop box location in the county. We don't need that many. All they do is contribute to fraud. And as far as the machines go, let's use both hand counting and machines and compare the results. Simple hand counting is easy to do. Now, there is a bill before the legislature being read before the Senate on the 14th of this month that wants to make hand counting so difficult, so expensive, so onerous that any county that wants to do it will give up and use machines. That's Bill 696, AB 696. Contact your senators, representatives, please tell them, bad idea, don't do it.
Mr. Rob, how much longer is your presentation?
This is it.
Thank you. Oh, wow. My timing is good.
Perfect timing there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Question through the chair.
Please don't leave the dais yet.
Question through the chair.
Yes.
To council. We've got a lot of citizens here that showed up. Can we move discussion right now, in discussion, can the citizens here in the county that shut up, and we still have Captain here, would like to direct some questions? How exactly should the chairman move forward? so that he can entertain?
We'd mentioned that before. We can do that out of order. We can go ahead because, like I said, your time's very valuable. Maybe the both of you can respond to questions. But I wanted to just make one point for the record. There was a couple of representations made, and I wouldn't expect anybody, ROV, to respond to them today. There are a lot of opinions, and we talked about that before, but I thought it was imperative that we listen to a different perspective. That's why you were invited. So I'm glad and I appreciate you coming. It doesn't mean I necessarily agree with everything.
Don't expect
but I just wanted to make it clear for the record that we don't need to respond to anything that's been presented, but we as a committee will consider what would be recommendations that we think we might make to the Board of Supervisors. So with that, I'm gonna use a cast system here and let the members, only thing I'm gonna deviate is our members, if you have pressing questions, and if not, then let's let the public, because there's a lot of the public that's here, I'd like to have them ask their questions.
Question through
Yes.
the chair. Evidently, to finish off on your agenda and stay legal here, do we have to finish the discussion? Register of Voters, Olivia Hill is still on that discussion, so she needs her 5 minutes, and then you can make a motion, move forward with questions and answers from the audience.
Yes.
I promise to be your quickest presenter this evening. The advisory committee members, you've been given a memo that I actually sent to our Board of Supervisors. In the last couple of months and just a few weeks ago, myself and many of my key staff, we attended the summer conference for elections officials in the states, and we're hearing a lot of things about the Voters' Choice Act and cost. So basically the package we were given originally is not what we're seeing for cost. So that's one big thing. Well, as I've heard all of you about your concerns with VCA, I've really started digging in, and Solano County inspired me a bit. John shared a little bit with what he's doing in his county as far as things that I know we could do just for 2024, and that's the precinct scanners and the availability of having every ballot type available. So if somebody comes in and they're voting provisional, they get the proper ballot and they're not disenfranchised with getting the incorrect ballot, and then they only get to vote on the items that are at that particular precinct. So a couple of small things we're looking at, but overall, big picture, I'm spending some time looking into why can't we just keep traditional polling places and figure out how we can modernize that so we have all the benefits of neighborhood polling places and also efficiencies for voters. So I'm proposing some time that I'm going to need to look at how can we do this unique thing. And to be honest, there's no one in our state doing it, but there's nothing in the elections code so far, I'm still researching, that has showed me that we cannot have traditional polling places with some of the modern efficiencies that we need. So for me, I'm not against going against the grain. If we find something that's legal and works and it makes our county happy, I don't see a problem with doing that. Of course, we have to look at financial analysis. We have to look at a lot of things. I'm not making promises tonight, but I want you to know that we're going to take a deep dive. I've requested from the Board of Supervisors to have until April of 2024 to come back and discuss the Voters' Choice Act. And the reason why I need time to look into this hybrid potential model that could be unique for our county. And also, as we're gearing up, I don't know if everyone knows, but September 14th we'll begin opening the petition in lieu period for the March primary. So we're starting to gear up and focus on election activities now, but I want to make sure that we are able to deliver a thorough report to the board and also to share with the Election Advisory Committee, hopefully at their January meeting next year, so that we can talk this through and come up with what works best for our county. So I just put this memo in there so that each committee member has it, and then it will be posted to our website if anybody cares to review it for further information. Just asking for more time and time to do an analysis. So, all right, that's all I have. Is there
Thank you. Great minds think alike. I was going to suggest to the committee that we table that anyway, so thank you.
Yep, of course. That's it.
Moving into the public comment, I want to advise the public, let's just have a 3-minute question or statement presentation. So whoever wants to line up and begin over here, we'll let the public go first so we can excuse the sheriff and our guest speaker.
Good evening. I apologize for my hoarseness. I seem to be allergic to half of the things that grow in San Joaquin County. My name is Mary Kennefick. I am the current president of the League of Women Voters of San Joaquin County. And on behalf of the LWVSJC, whose many voices I am here to represent, I'd like to offer some remarks in support of the Voters' Choice Act, period, the Voters' Choice Act. The VCA will expand opportunities to vote to more eligible San Joaquin County voters while safeguarding vote integrity. As regards fraud, there's no denying that the potential for voter fraud is a concern voiced by many. However, courts and election officials appointed by both major political parties have repeatedly said that there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud and none that has affected any election. We should not let disappointment with election results, however heartfelt, displace the honest work of election officials locally and across the country. Local residents have pointed to the dishonesty of Shakir Khan to support their concerns. He was and is an aberration, and he was caught. Cases of voter fraud are rare, and there is no evidence that they have affected the outcomes of elections. We should keep cases like his in proper perspective. Hand counting of paper ballots is sometimes offered as a cure for fraud, but with the complexity of today's consolidated elections, this is completely impractical and even more prone to error. The implementation of vote centers through the Voters' Choice Act will actually help prevent voter fraud, since trained staff will be able to verify voter eligibility on site and prevent unqualified people from casting a ballot. As regards early voting, maybe this is good news. And then there is early voting. Both major political parties are now in rare accord that early voting is a good thing. The new Republican National Committee recommendation to, quote, bank your votes, seeks to rectify the vote counting time lag of same-day voting by encouraging early in-person voting. In San Joaquin County, currently, in-person voting is not even possible. To make in-person early voting possible in San Joaquin County, the county needs to complete the implementation of the VCA. Polling places, it's true that the elimination of neighborhood polling places is problematic for some. But the practical fact is that it is now very difficult to find sufficient volunteers to staff our 200 polling places. Mail-in ballots are the answer for many since they are widely available. Vote centers are another option. They will provide well-trained staff at the projected 40 vote centers, offering voters an in-person voting option prior to election
30
day.
seconds, ma'am.
Okay, while prior to being able to verify voter eligibility on site. Vote centers would also cut down on provisional ballots. This option will make vote counting more accurate, safer, and quicker. I'm going to jump over voter access. You know that 15% more people are likely to, in fact, cast ballots.
Thank you,
if the
ma'am.
Voter is.
Thank you.
Let's be wise.
Can we
and
have our
avoid
next
throwing
speaker,
out the
please?
baby with the bathwater.
I don't want to get the hook, ma'am.
Modernize elections in San Joaquin County by implementing the complete VCA.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Collins. I've just been recently getting involved in this. My wife and I actually held a voter integrity symposium in Lodi this last weekend. Had a little bit of a pushback, but I got to tell you something. Listening today, I almost wonder where the integrity in voting is. It's a little frightening. Correct me if I was wrong. Did you explain to us that how easy it was for Mr. Khan to create votes? I mean, it sounded like a third grader could do it, but that's just me. What I've been looking at here is this. We have such an in-depth problem. One thing people don't understand when it comes to statistics and issues, there is no way, and this is not your problem, you get landed on your table, but 390,000 voters, there is no way we can check that without scrapping it, to be honest with you guys. So we have to create a new system, change what we have, because there's no way to go back down and check all 393,000. It's an impossibility, I promise you that. Now my question to you is this. We found out, you guys ran into it on accident, correct?
Yes.
So, there's 57 other counties in the state of California. For those of you who don't know, we got 58 counties. That means we have 58 sheriffs. Unless they've been given something to go on, they're not gonna even have started. It's naive to believe that there's not other things happening here and every other county. So we have to start reaching out. People have to start figuring out where these things are going and how they're being done, because we are missing the point here. It is not a safe election, and we have to start chasing those issues. My other question is the DMV. Has anybody investigated the DMV? If the people are allowed to vote or be counted via the DMV, how do we really know that those people are real? Do you know?
I cannot answer that question.
Olivia, do you know?
It should be verified.
It
So
should
anything
be.
on our rolls should be verified with an ID and a 4-digit social security number.
So, okay,
California ID.
but if they have a DMV, can they just vote if they have a DMV, driver's license?
They can't just vote. Well, if they are a registered voter and they've provided their driver's license number, then they would be verified as a valid voter.
So we gotta start checking these things out, and I'm telling you, there's a lot more to this that people are missing, and everyone wants it to be happy. I was blind to this, I always thought it was wonderful, and I'll be done here in a second, but I gotta tell you guys, we're missing the boat here. There is a lot going on, and we can bury our heads in the sand and believe it's not an issue, but it's the biggest issue we've faced, and we can't fix anything if we can't fix our voting. It's the most important thing we have as citizens of the United States, and we're missing the boat, so God bless everyone.
Thank you so much. Anybody else?
Yes, Tony, only me. You know I'll show up.
I'm really gonna watch your time.
Hi, my name is Rhea, and I live in livable, lovable Lodi. That looks a little on the corrupt side, but hey. I think the only thing I really want to say, because I agree, these other people addressed, mostly Michael, addressed what I was going to say, but I'm very concerned about who's watching the voter rolls, who's monitoring, auditing, who is taking control of our voter rolls. If it is farmed out to another company, it's incredibly obvious they're doing an extremely poor job. I mean, I'm stunned at the numbers, and there's gotta be a way. I don't have an answer, but it's like, can we pull that? Can we, take their contract away and hire somebody who's, honest? Can we do any of that? At least try? I mean, this is stunning in my view. And I think, I don't know how much money we're paying them, but I would start looking at the numbers, like how much would it cost to have employees? And I know there's benefits and all that good stuff, but we can't, in my view, is if we fix the elections, if we have true, honest elections, everything else will be fixed. Everything will be fixed. And if someone isn't committing a crime, but there's opportunity and we know the opportunity exists, we know that there's loopholes, major gaps of possibility, then don't wait for something to go wrong. If you see it, we've seen it, we've been shown the possibilities. It's up to us, even as a county, not just the state. The state should do it, of course, everybody should do it. But here in this county, we can fix that. I mean, what measures can we add to that to close those loopholes, to stop the cheat? That's really what I'm thinking. People, we have to address this. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Two minutes for you.
Jim Shoemaker. The issues that we're looking at right now are, why isn't our DA filing a lawsuit against the state of California and the Assembly and the state Senate and the governor for filing this nonsense to create this issue? We need to take a stand as a lesser magistrate from this county to hold these guys accountable for forcing us to do illegal activity and allowing the criminality to take effect. And the issue here is, you know, in many other first world countries, they've done away with this stuff. And when you have France, sit here, get rid of all their machines, everything else, they went to single day voting. Stamp the hand, check the ID, they knew everything that was going on, okay? There's no reason why, you know, supposedly we're a first world country. We should be able to do that. Why is it even under Jimmy Carter when he was down in South America, you know, making sure the elections were fair, they were checking people's hands, marking them. Why is it over in the Middle East when we come in with our military and they give them elections, we're checking every single person that's standing in line at a single time? The point is, we have seen and proof right here, because of Lodi, that this is happening. Now, I've been involved over 15 years looking into voter fraud and had friends that have done the same analysis for years. And what Tony brought up earlier, I remember clients of mine that own apartment buildings, and guys would go around before the election time and literally register, just get their signatures, and then turn in those deals with their addresses. Now, how do I know that? Because they told me. They were sitting here doing that. Now, this is 20 years ago, okay? So the issue is us at the local level, our sheriff's department stepping up, getting involved in this, and learning what to look for is important. But we need to hold our elected officials, and I'd say since our DA has really stood up and started supporting getting rid of these criminals that we have, maybe we should put some pressure on him to go after the criminals that are pushing these illegal laws and forcing our ROV to sit here and do this. So that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Cindy Hill, and I too am from Lodi. I have a question. How many people in this room have been precinct workers? Okay. So I'm just kind of curious if you guys have experienced the same thing I've experienced. Number one, I will tell you that I know a lot of people in my community that have signed up to be a precinct worker, have not gotten a phone call, have asked over and over, how do I do this? And I just say, you know, I feel like I'm a lucky one because I've been able to, I feel like in a sense, be on the front line to see some of the things that have happened. The recall, going to what you had said, was a really interesting, that was my first year of being a poll worker. And during that day, there were so many people in the precinct that I was at that I could tell that they were uncomfortable with the ballot. And they came in without a ballot. And I was sitting at the computer, checking them in. Very high percentage of the people that came to me and gave me their name, address, wanted a ballot, and I had to turn to them and say, I'm sorry, you've already voted. Over and over and over. What happened? They were forced to vote provisionally, okay? I still am unsure if, in my mind, I know provisional ballots, I understand they're counted last, but are they counted, really, okay? Let's go one more step further. People talk about election fraud. To me, I also consider election fraud there's another take on that, and that's making it difficult for people to vote, okay? So in San Joaquin County, in several of the years, the cycles that I've been there, people come up to me and they say, I want to vote. And I look up their name and I say, I'm sorry, you got the wrong precinct. And they say, well, how can I have the wrong precinct? I have a letter here. I look at, give me the letter, and what happens is they get their vote, they get their ballot in the mail with a cover letter that I'm gonna tell you, I've looked at that cover letter. The first is kind of a direction. The second page is, it tells the drop boxes. And on the very bottom line, it says where their precinct is. So they're not being directed to their precinct initially. It's like I feel like they're fed to go to the drop boxes. Second is
30 seconds.
Sorry, there's a letter like 2 weeks before the voting. And what happened was these people would come in and they'd say, yeah, I want to vote here at this precinct. And I'd have to say, sorry, it's not your precinct. Your choice is to get in your car and drive to your precinct, or what? Vote provisional. Again, what are we doing with those votes? Another thing I want to talk about, the last one, there's two more things, hopefully I can get them in.
No, you
There's
can't. Get the first one in.
Felt tip markers, and the last one, smearing. When I asked the people that were heading my precinct, why are we using felt tip markers? They said, that's what the county is telling us to use. And that was the first thing. Yes, we had the ballpoint pen markers, or ballpoint pens, but they were really pushing those markers. Anything else? Can I have any more time?
Thank you.
No? Okay.
Hi, Molly Watkins. I am not from Lodi. I do want to ask, will both of these presentations be posted somewhere where we can look at them?
I'll post everything to the website.
Okay,
after.
so
Yeah.
they'll be on your part of the website?
By tomorrow morning, they'll be on the
Okay,
RB website
excellent.
under Election Advisory Committee.
Okay, and then I guess what I want to reiterate is what Dave said at the very end. I think we got to vote in person. I think the marketing strategy should be show up in person. They can show you your ID. It's not required and it's not allowed to demand that you show your ID, but you can show your ID. There's nothing wrong with that. And vote in person. Because it's really hard to impersonate the 5'2" person here if you think you're going to be 6'2" over there. I feel like a man today. No, you have to use the name that's on the roll. So I think our marketing strategy and to cut out a little bit of fraud would be to start voting in person.
Thank you. You had another minute if you want to come back.
Can I have a time?
No.
Hello, my name is Jim Hicks. I am from Lodi. Thank you. I just have three quick things. I think this is Q&A, so I would like if Olivia could, Ms. Hale could, answer that question. Who does take care of our polls?
The rolls or the polls?
Polls. The rolls.
The rolls.
Sorry.
So actually we do, and so I want to clarify that actually. It's that we use a company called DFM, and they are a company that is only our database provider. Our staff updates the voter rolls and maintains them. It's not this company.
Wow. So are you guys doing a good job?
Well, hopefully we're doing a lot better than we were.
Okay. Just wondered. Okay. Second question or comment on this one is, thank you for all your investigation that the police department did on Shakir Khan. But my takeaway from that is this is an unsophisticated person was able to do all of this and win an election. Think about what a sophisticated operative could do with this. With massive amounts of people, we got a problem here. Our system is broken. And my last point is this. I think we can all agree that our system is broken. So I think we got to stop saying we have safe, fair elections. Let's admit we got a problem here. Let's all work together. Let's start from San Joaquin County. Let's be the one. Let's bring this up. Like Jim says, let's get this before the state. Let's sue them, whatever it needs to be done. Olivia, I know it's not all you. I know you have to follow what comes down from the states, but you could help us with this. You could be the hero here. Let's get our elections fixed. Let's not keep saying they're good when we all know they're not. That's it.
Thank you. Oh, jeez. Okay.
I'm Bill Smith, and I just, I enjoyed Dave's presentation, and one of the things that rings clear in my mind is chain of custody. Is, if we send out 750,000 ballots and we only get back 100,000 ballots, something's really wrong. So we need to chase down and find out where the rest of those ballots are. We need to reconcile, needs to be reconciled. And the chain of custody, we need to see where they're going, where it's from, and we need volunteers to come here, work here, and be eyes on to see what's going on. We can't just assume that it's being done properly. I mean, everybody in this room knows where they voted for their first time. They know the precinct, they know the street address, they know, everybody knows where they voted for the first time in their life. So it's not like a big mystery to everybody. We should be able to figure this out and move through it. It's not like, oh, this is new stuff, this is new voter stuff. We just need to chain of custody, get involved, come down here, go into Olivia's office, volunteer, watch people count ballots, and let's get it done.
Thank you. It doesn't appear there's any more. Captain, I'm sorry. I thought they were going to direct them at you and also our guest speaker. We have one more?
Hi, yeah, I'm Joe Ferrari. I'm a
Go ahead.
local
I'm sorry. I
resident.
apologize.
Yeah, I'm Joe Ferrari. I'm a local resident here. I just had a question. The DFM associates that manage the database, do they have the ability to edit or to override entries into the voter rolls?
They're not authorized to do that, and if they were, our system does leave an imprint if they were to ever touch anything. And so when you look at anybody's voter roll, it'll actually have the initials of one of our particular staff that was the last person that touched that voter data.
It would be nice to have somebody on the outside audit that as well, so that we have a second set of eyes looking at that, I think, because I used to do auditing of the, financial statements many years ago, and I know a second set of eyes always brings about additional trust in the system, you know what I mean? So I just think maybe the committee should think about, having another auditor look at it or something like that. And I also wanted to kind of bring up, this thing's horrible, let me see. Just the idea that I know with vote by mail, there's a set of rules, in the state code that allow almost like a voter's bill of rights to, when you go, on the day of that, when it starts counting, the tabulating and all that, basically you're allowed to kind of watch the signature verification, but you're not allowed to get very close when this stuff is going on the day of the election. I think kind of a parallel, system should be, rights and the law should be given for that, the day of the election, not just, for prior on the vote by mail. I think maybe the committee should think about drafting up some kind of Bill of Rights for on the day of the election observers.
Thank you. A voter's Bill of Rights? Yeah. Thank you. Before I turn my back on the public, is there anybody else in the public like to speak? I can safely go forward to the agenda. Thank you again, both of you. It doesn't appear they have any questions directed at you. Really appreciate your time and efforts. On the agenda, after the public comment section, we have committee comments, but before we do that, looking at our agenda, item number 3, we had schedule our next meeting, and with all of this information that we're being bombarded with and all of the reading we have to do, I think that we ought to probably have another meeting next month unless there's an objection. I'm going to suggest that the 14th of September, if this room is available, Josh, I guess you would be the one checking the availability of the room, that we'd like to have a meeting. Is there any objection from the committee members in meeting next month? I can't hear you, sorry.
I'm
I'm sorry, the recommendations call for 2 meetings this calendar year. This was the second one.
What calls for 2 meetings?
The recommendation for the Board of Supervisors to approve the Election Advisory Committee's composition, role, responsibilities, and operating procedures.
We weren't limited to meetings. There's no limitations. If this committee wants to get anything done, we could probably meet monthly. There's a lot of work to do. If we're limited,
It's my understanding this committee wasn't set up to meet monthly. It's also my understanding with Ms. Hale moving into the election cycle
well, they're
rather quickly in September.
You're with the county council,
Yes, sir.
and you're telling me what? I want a legal opinion as to what you're saying right now.
The rules do not, the rules provide for 2 meetings in 2023.
That's a minimum.
Yeah,
We start with that as the floor.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I have a question, is you gotta remember what the goal is. The goal is recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. So, the more meetings we have, the longer you go is gonna delay any type of board action too. So I wanna make sure that you understand, you know, what the set calendar is so that, for instance, VCA, you know, in our minds, we can think whatever we want. We haven't given the registrar any guidance. And so until she's given guidance, she's gonna keep working on both paths. So in order for the board to give recommendation to the register of voters, we're waiting on this committee. So I'm not one opinion or another. I'm just letting you know that, you know, the future of the elections office is kind of on you guys right now.
Chair, can I say
Yes.
something to that?
Yes.
please? That's so unfair, because when there's so much to look at, and Olivia needs time to look at other stuff, and this is a big decision, and everybody that stood up there said, we need to close this gap. We need to figure out this problem and get it fixed. There's a lot to this, and we can't do it on 2 meetings. And the looks of it, it should be by those presentations. If we have more presentations, it has to be done every other week. The bottom line is, you know, once a month is, I can see 2 as a requirement, but we need to have this for a few months going forward.
I would like to have the opinion of the rest of the committee, and then we can collectively resign if this is the end of this meeting, and this is what they intended, 2 meetings, or we can go forward and actually do some work.
Mr. Chairman, if I understand the situation correctly, we're supposed to give some recommendations and guidance to the Board of Supervisors in conjunction with Ms. Hale, who the ROV has this Voter Choice Act that we can't really take an action on it right now because she has more investigation that she wants to do. And we want to hear the results of her investigation. And once she's concluded that, then we need to review it to make a recommendation to the board, and they want that recommendation from us pretty quickly. So it sounds like we need to wait for her, and then we need to make a recommendation to them quickly thereafter. So we should have another meeting this year as soon as possible based on Ms. Hale's information that she can get back to us.
Through the chair.
What is as soon as you could make a recommendation to us?
So I plan on meeting with all of you in January of 2024 to go over what could be options for the voter's choice. Now, here's the thing, and how I understood this is it's a minimum of 2 meetings for my presence. The concern is as you all meet, if you have asks from me and I'm gearing up for the election, is my availability to be able to provide resources to you and to be present at meetings, because come September, I'm going to be gearing up for this election, and it'll be full swing by mid-October. So the concern is my availability to be able to meet with you all. I don't see, from what I understand, an issue with them having an additional meeting. They would just have to understand that my ability to provide resources. So like example, today you all decide you want to talk about some of these presentations, and there might be a large laundry list of things that you want me to look at. In order for me to provide that report, I need it in a timely manner to be able to provide it back to you. And the concern is I have petition in lieu opening. We have 21 judges that we're going to be filing this election cycle. There's a lot of things happening, and so I think that is the concern, is meetings where I may not be able to give the information that you all need from me.
Here's my thought, and I'll leave it up to the majority of the committee. We would meet so that we wouldn't have 50 questions from each of these members going to you. But we would collectively say, these are our priorities we would like to have. You address this, this, and this. And until we act as an actual working group, that's not going to happen. So it's not necessary that we even meet at this location unless county council tells us we have to meet at this location. But I don't see anything, and if in fact, because I have an opinion based on the material I've read on the Voters' Choice Act, where today, and I'm not going to bias the rest of the committee, I could vote right now on what I think about the Voters' Choice Act. But
through the chair, you do have that right.
To express that opinion and bias other members is what I would not want to do, but I do have an opinion, and that opinion I'll reserve. That's why I think we should bring our opinions after they read the material and they read more about what you've presented today, and then we can make a decision. I think that's probably one of the most important things we ought to be acting on right now, is the Voters' Choice Act.
Through the chair, there is no required location. However, in order to comply with the Brown Act, it is a meeting open to the public, so it would have to be published, noticed appropriately. So that would be my one concern in light of the one comment you have made.
Yeah, the county administrative officer has been very cooperative. They have facilitated that and make sure we're within the Brown Act. So we feel very comfortable that the CAO has assigned Josh. He's over there getting ready to pull a robbery. He's got his mask on, but no, we're comfortable that we can comply with the law.
And through the chair, also your recordings are done here. So these are live streamed to YouTube when we have these meetings. So that would be the other benefit of having it here. And as far as Voters' Choice Act, we are not making this decision on Voters' Choice Act for the 2024 elections. This wouldn't, if in the event that we did decide to do that, or even any variation of, it would be effective in 2026. I need 22 months to implement a change and a drastic change like that. And so as long as we have that answer by April of 2024, we're still well within, we'll have still 26 months to implement if we did
That
decide
puts
to
a
do that.
completely different light on it, and I thought we were being pressured and that we were going to wait until we decided to do something else, and we didn't participate in that. So having said that, there's no urgency on that particular issue. But I have talked to some of the members, and they do believe that more than 2 meetings are necessary. We thought that was the ground floor, unless the members collectively feel that I have misinterpreted your thoughts. We were not going to have 2 meetings and then die a friendly death.
Through the chair, and just hoping that there is the 5 meetings for the election year. There are 5 meetings scheduled, and one of those is in January, and I plan 100% to come back at that January meeting. So the one thing, whatever you all decide, is that I know what date in January you're meeting, so I can be 100% prepared to deliver my findings.
Well, I will entertain a motion from our body as to when to have the next one by a show of hands. Does anybody have a particular date? I'd suggested next month because I thought we'd have to be urgently addressing the Voters' Choice Act. Anybody have a suggestion for a meeting? David?
I think it's a Thursday, September 14th. The second Thursday in September, 6 p.m.
Anybody have a second suggestion for a meeting?
I would recommend January 11th, and that way Ms. Hale can bring back all of her information, and I don't see that we have a timeliness to this.
All right, then we have, do we have a third suggestion? If not, then we'll collectively vote on those two dates. If there's not a third one, then all those in favor of Thursday the 14th, having a meeting, by show of hands. I think it's unanimous. I do not have to vote. Should not, only to break ties. With that, unless there's some illegal constriction against it, we will meet on September 14th. And we are therefore adjourned.
Through the chair?
Yes.
One more thing, I'm sorry. We need to make sure that we're also getting your agenda in a timely fashion. So because you're planning to have a meeting in about 30 days, if you all can turn that agenda in as soon as possible. And then the meeting minutes, like I think that it might have gotten sent to you and not sent to us because we want to make sure we're including all of that. So whatever needs to happen there to make sure we communicate that. We want to do a good job and make sure we're giving you guys all the information that you need.
Okay, and
Chair, can I ask one question for?
yes.
Okay. Scenario. This is not having you to reinvent the wheel. If we were to go back in the days when I was younger, in person, showing ID, how long would it really, don't laugh, how long would it really be to transform from what we're doing now to doing that?
We would need a legislative change because the state of California mandates that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Without ID.
I know,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, but if we went back to in-person.
In-person voting, and we still offer that. You know, the thing is prior to COVID, we had 81% of our voters that wanted to be vote by mail voters, and they requested it. It wasn't a mandated thing like it is now. So going forward, we do offer in-person voting. I hear you guys about offering more advertising about that. I actually made a note about making sure the polling place location's bigger on your insert so you know where you're going. And so things of that nature. I mean, it's a matter of us all working together and the opinions that you bring forward, and collectively, you know, we'll do our best to honor those within the confines of the law.
But would it really take 22 months to transform it?
Oh, to Voters' Choice Act?
No,
No.
to do paper ballots in person.
To do paper ballots, I recommend you all looking into Shasta County and what's unfolding there. The cost to do hand counts is coming across as like they're a much smaller county, and they're predicting that they're going to need an extra $2 million per election just to hand count. It's a lot more extensive. I don't think I have the means right now to speak on what a hand count really looks like. I will say, keep in mind, yes, we use machines, but we also do a 1% manual tally at the end of every single election where we do hand count a portion of the ballots. That's what I can give you on that. I'm happy to return with information later.
How long would it take you to transform to that process from like March to be able to do it by November?
We would not, I would not, so what we're doing and how we're going forward right now is set in stone for the next two elections. So we have already passed that milestone. You want to know what your election administration plan is at least 18 months out from any given election, so.
Any other committee comments? Yes.
Can we do better advertising that there is in-person voting? Because I had so many people say, I would like to vote in person, but they didn't have it. And I know I went to one polling place and we sat there for about 2 hours and very seldom did anybody come in. And then I talked to some of my neighbors and they said, I didn't know I could have voted in person, so I didn't vote.
I think the COVID era threw people off, and so we can definitely make sure we do a better job of sharing that in person is 100% an option.
Supervisor Ding?
Yeah, and one of the things I've requested from the Registers of Voters office, and she's putting this together now, because under state mandates, there are certain things we can't do. But the one thing that we are not prohibited in doing is going back and opening as many polling places in person as possible. And so I've asked her for a list of, you know, how many polling places we have right now, so that this committee could look at, you know, this is our goal, you know, where did we have polling places, where did we not have polling places, and how are we going to generate the volunteers to man them if you move forward. So I'll have that for you for next meeting as well.
Thank you. With that, there are no more comments. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I
you have
do
a comment?
I have a comment.
So you suggested the September 14th meeting, and my understanding was even though I'm just an alternate, that my attendance is mandatory and I cannot do the 14th. So what do you suggest?
Well, if you're an alternate, none of us are mandatorily required to come here.
Oh, I thought we had to attend all meetings.
Absolutely not. If you
Oh,
cannot come
I
here.
read that.
No,
I
so.
definitely read that.
If there's no other
Counsel?
comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Made,
Hold
so
on,
made.
Mr. Chairman, through the chairman, well, we just dealt with this with the mosquito vector control district. You're not able to attend, you just in writing or email, whatever, you send him a note and said, I am unable to attend, so it's not in writing and you'll be fine.
Motion, any second? Seconded by, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Good.